It starts like any parent's worst nightmare made real. Late afternoon shadows stretch across a suburban park, the joyful sounds of children playing abruptly pierced by a father's frantic calls. David Chennault, a dedicated IT consultant, searches desperately for his 7-year-old daughter Maya, who was playing near the swings just moments ago and has now vanished. Panic claws at his throat. He calls 911, his voice trembling but clear, reporting his child missing. Officer Thompson responds. But instead of immediate action, Thompson arrives with suspicion in his eyes, his demeanor dismissive, almost bored. He questions David's composure, implies parental negligence, suggests Maya probably just wandered off, and dismisses the frantic father's pleas for an immediate, wide-scale search. He treats the potential abduction of a black child with callous indifference, refusing to even file a formal report yet. What Officer Thompson, blinded by his prejudice and laziness, doesn't know is that the distraught father he's dismissing isn't just any IT consultant. David Chennault holds top-secret clearance and works on critical cybersecurity infrastructure for the Department of Defense, possessing emergency communication protocols reserved for national security-level events. Thompson just dismissed the place of a man with a direct line to the Pentagon's command center. A firestorm of federal intervention, cutting through local bureaucracy like a hot knife, is about to be unleashed by one desperate father's phone call. Stick around. Witnessing this officer realize the catastrophic magnitude of his biased inaction is a moment you don't want to miss. And hey, as this unfolds, let us know where you're joining us from. City, state, country. Drop it in the comments below. Your presence here matters as we explore these critical stories. Ready to find out exactly how it all went down? Buckle up, let's dive right in. The park, usually a place of laughter and light for David Chennault and his 7-year-old daughter Maya, had transformed into a landscape of sheer terror in the space of perhaps 5 minutes. One moment, Maya was giggling, her bright pink jacket, a vivid splash of color against the green grass, as she pumped her legs higher and higher on the swing set. David had looked down at his phone for barely a minute, responding to a non-urgent work text, the mundane intruding briefly on the precious father-daughter time. When he looked back up, the swing was empty, swaying gently, mockingly. Maya was gone. Panic, cold and absolute, seized him instantly. "Maya!" His voice, usually calm and measured, cracked with sudden fear. "Maya, where are you? Honey." He scanned. The playground. The slides, the climbing structure, the nearby sandbox. Nothing. He sprinted towards the edge of the park bordering the woods, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Maya!" Other parents paused their conversations, their expressions shifting from casual enjoyment to concern as they registered the raw terror in his voice. He questioned them frantically. "Did you see a little girl in a pink jacket, about this tall, pigtails?" They offered sympathetic shakes of the head, worried glances towards their own children, pulling them closer. Someone mentioned seeing a beat-up blue van parked near the entrance earlier, but hadn't thought much of it. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Maya wasn't hiding. She wasn't playing a game. She was gone. With trembling fingers, David dialed 911, the numbers blurring through the film of panicked tears threatening to overwhelm him. He forced himself to be clear, concise, providing Maya's name, age, description, clothing, last known location, the time she went missing, mentioning the vague sighting of the blue van. Every syllable felt choked, pulled from a place of primal fear. He needed help. Now. The dispatcher assured him units were on the way, urged him to stay put. Waiting felt like torture. Every passing car, every rustle of leaves, twisted his gut. Where was she? Was she scared? Hurt? The possibilities were unbearable. Finally, after what felt like a lifetime, but was likely only 10 agonizing minutes, a single patrol car rolled slowly into the park's small parking lot, its lights not even flashing initially. Officer Thompson emerged, adjusting his belt, his movements unhurried, almost lackadaisical. He ambled towards David, who ran to meet him, words tumbling out in a desperate torrent. "My daughter, Maya, 7 years old, pink jacket. She was..." Right here, just vanished maybe 5-10 minutes ago. Someone saw a blue van. Thompson held up a hand, cutting him off mid-sentence. All right, slow down, sir, he said, his tone not reassuring but impatient, dismissive. He wasn't looking at the playground, wasn't scanning the woods. He was looking at David, his eyes narrowed slightly, taking in David's casual attire, his race, his obvious distress. What's your name? David Chennault. Please, officer, my daughter. Okay, Mr. Chennault, Thompson interrupted again, pulling out a notepad with exaggerated slowness. Let's start from the beginning. When did you last see the child? David repeated the information, trying to keep the panic from overwhelming. His voice emphasizing the short time frame, the suddenness of her disappearance. Thompson scribbled a few notes, his expression radiating boredom mixed with suspicion. Okay. And you're sure she didn't just wander off? Kids do that, you know. Especially, he paused, his gaze sweeping over David again, when maybe the parent isn't paying close enough attention. The implication, the victim-blaming veiled as a question, was immediate, infuriating. No, David insisted, his voice rising despite his efforts. She wouldn't just wander off, not Maya. She knows never to leave the playground without me. Someone must have taken her, that blue van. Whoa, let's not jump to conclusions, Thompson said condescendingly. 9 times out of 10, these things resolve themselves. Kid wanders off, gets distracted by a squirrel, shows up back home wondering what all the fuss is about. He actually chuckled softly. A chuckle, while David's world was imploding. Look, Thompson continued, flipping his notepad shut with an air of finality. Department policy. We generally wait 24 hours before filing a formal missing persons report for a runaway or wandering child, unless there's clear evidence of abduction. Clear evidence? David echoed incredulously. She's 7. She vanished from a public park in broad daylight. What more evidence do you need? You need to issue an Amber Alert. You need to search the area, check traffic cameras for that van. Thompson sighed heavily, radiating annoyance. Sir, you need to calm down. Getting hysterical isn't helping anyone. Like I said, she probably just wandered off. Give it a few hours. Check back home, call her friend's parents. If she hasn't turned up by morning, then we can talk about filing. A report. He started to turn away. Just keep your phone on. He wasn't just dismissing David's fears. He was refusing to even initiate the basic protocols for a potentially abducted child. His decision seemingly cemented by his prejudiced assessment of the distraught black father standing before him. David watched him walk back towards his patrol car, a wave of disbelief, fury, and terrifying helplessness washing over him. His daughter was missing. Time was critical, and the officer sworn to protect and serve had just laughed off his nightmare and told him to wait. As Officer Thompson's patrol car pulled away, leaving David standing alone in the rapidly darkening park, a cold dread unlike anything he had ever experienced settled over him. The casual dismissal, the blatant lack of urgency, the underlying racist assumption that he was somehow negligent or overreacting, it was infuriating, yes, but the fury was dwarfed by the terrifying reality. Maya was gone. Precious minutes were ticking by, and the official channel for help had just slammed the door in his face. He couldn't wait 24 hours. He couldn't just give it a few hours. Every instinct, every fiber of his being screamed that Maya was in danger, that immediate action was paramount. He felt utterly terrifyingly alone, abandoned by the very system meant to protect his child. But paralysis wasn't an option. Panic yielded momentarily to the ingrained problem-solving mindset that defined his professional life. He needed data. He needed resources. He needed to act. He pulled out his phone again, his hands still shaking but his mind racing. First, he called his ex-wife Karen. Their relationship was amicable, focused solely on co-parenting Maya. Hearing the news, Karen dissolved into near hysterics, but quickly pulled herself together, promising to immediately check Maya's school. Friends' parents, circulate Maya's picture on local social media parenting groups, and head straight to the park area to help search. Knowing Karen was activating the informal community network provided a sliver of comfort, but David knew it wasn't enough. Next, he called his own parents, his voice thick with emotion as he relayed the horrifying news, asking them to coordinate. With Karen, and start calling extended family and friends in the area, creating a wider net of eyes and ears. Then the hardest part. He started systematically calling neighbors near the park, local businesses with potential exterior security cameras facing the street, asking, pleading for any information, any footage that might show Maya, the blue van, anything out of the ordinary around the time she disappeared. Most people were sympathetic, but hadn't seen anything useful. A couple promised to review their camera footage, but warned it might take time. Every dead end felt like another precious minute lost. He started his own frantic search again, moving beyond the playground, pushing through the underbrush at the edge of the woods, calling Maya's name until his voice was raw, scanning every shadow, every bush, his imagination conjuring horrifying scenarios. The sun dipped below the horizon, plunging the park into deeper shadow, amplifying his fear. Other parents had long since gathered their own children and left, casting pitying, helpless glances his way. He was aware of Karen arriving, her face, pale and tear-streaked, beginning her own desperate search on the other side of the park, her calls for Maya mingling hauntingly with his own. He tried calling the police non-emergency line again, hoping to get a different dispatcher, maybe a different officer. He explained the situation again, emphasizing Maya's age, the specific time frame, the blue van sighting. The response was polite but firm. Officer Thompson had already assessed the situation. No formal report would be taken yet. Standard procedure for potential runaways. He mentioned Officer Thompson's dismissive attitude, his refusal to act. But the dispatcher merely reiterated policy. He felt like he was screaming into a void, hitting an impenetrable bureaucratic wall built on indifference and, he suspected, prejudice. He hung up, feeling a surge of rage mix with the icy fear. The system wasn't just slow. It seemed deliberately obstructive, minimizing the potential danger to his black child based on assumptions made by one biased officer. He checked his watch. Nearly 2 hours had passed since Maya vanished. 2 hours. In a potential abduction scenario, those first hours were absolutely critical. The window for finding her safe was closing with terrifying speed. He felt the tendrils of despair begin to wrap around him. What else could he do? Who else could? Harkle. He had exhausted the conventional options. The local system had failed him. He leaned against a tree, breathing hard, fighting back tears of frustration and terror. Then, an idea sparked, born of desperation and the unique, high-stakes world he inhabited professionally. An extreme option, a protocol reserved for dire emergencies, potentially violating security clearances if used improperly. But Maya was his world, and the conventional channels were closed. He pulled out his phone again, scrolling past his regular contacts to a secure encrypted application, the one linking him to his other job, the one involving national security. David's fingers hovered over the secure application icon on his phone, a complex mix of fear and resolve churning within him. Using this channel for a personal matter was strictly against protocol, potentially career-ending, possibly even attracting legal trouble for misuse of classified communication systems. The emergency protocols embedded within the app were designed for catastrophic cyber attacks on critical infrastructure, imminent threats to national security, situations where immediate, high-level multi-agency coordination was required, bypassing all normal bureaucratic layers. His daughter's disappearance, however terrifying and personally catastrophic, didn't technically fit those parameters. Yet, the local system had utterly failed him. Officer Thompson's prejudiced dismissal wasn't just incompetent. It felt like a fundamental breakdown of the societal contract, leaving David with no viable path forward through conventional means. And Maya was missing. The ticking clock wasn't just a metaphor. It felt like a literal countdown to an unbearable outcome. What was protocol compared to his daughter's life? He thought about the potential fallout. A reprimand, suspension, termination from the high-level cybersecurity consulting work he did for various Department of Defense agencies, including direct liaisons within the Pentagon's Cyber Command, losing his clearance. It was all possible. But then he pictured Maya's face, her infectious giggle, the way she trusted him implicitly to keep her safe. That trust had been violated, not by his own inattention, though guilt gnawed at him regardless, but potentially by an unknown predator, and compounded by the indifference of the officer sworn to protect her. His career, his clearance, they meant nothing if Maya wasn't safe. His primary duty wasn't to protocol anymore. It was to his daughter. With a deep, steadying breath that tasted of desperation and defiance, he tapped the secure app icon. It opened, not with a familiar interface, but with layers of biometric and passphrase authentication. Fingerprint scan, facial recognition, a complex alphanumeric code he entered from memory. Once authenticated, the screen displayed a minimalist interface with only a few stark options. He ignored the standard reporting channels and navigated directly to the emergency contact protocol labeled Nightingale Blue, a rarely used direct, encrypted link reserved for imminent, severe threats requiring immediate Pentagon-level situational awareness and potential asset deployment, typically involving compromised networks or personnel linked to critical defense systems. He knew activating it would trigger immediate alarms at the highest levels, demanding instant verification and justification. He selected the Voice Secure Burst option. A small red light blinked on the screen, indicating an encrypted channel was being established. It connected almost instantly, not with a ringtone, but with a synthesized neutral voice stating, "Nightingale Blue channel active. State nature of emergency and authentication code Delta Sigma Niner." David's voice was hoarse, thick with emotion, but he forced clarity. "Authentication Delta Sigma Niner. This is Consultant Chennault, ID 774 Alpha Kilo. Critical personal emergency requiring immediate asset assistance. My daughter Maya Chennault, age 7, federal dependent identifier on file, has been abducted. Last known location, Westwood Park, City-State, approximately 17:05 local time. Local law enforcement," his voice hardened with controlled anger, "has refused to initiate standard missing child protocols or Amber Alert due to perceived lack of evidence and potential bias. Requesting immediate activation of federal child abduction response protocols and any available technical surveillance assets for location tracking and vehicle identification, specifically seeking information on a late-model blue van, possible partial plate." He relayed the details Karen had gathered from the other parent. He knew mentioning his dependent status and the failure of local LE were key triggers for certain inter-agency agreements, often involving military liaison support. In specific circumstances, especially when high-clearance personnel or their families might be tangentially involved or targeted. He wasn't explicitly claiming Maya's disappearance was linked to his work, but he was using the language and channels designed for high-priority federal response, effectively bypassing the local bottleneck. There was a brief pause on the other end, the silence stretching, amplifying the frantic pounding of David's heart. He braced for refusal, for a demand for further justification, for the synthesized voice to tell him this channel was inappropriate. Instead, the voice returned, still neutral but with an underlying shift in urgency. "Acknowledged, Consultant Chennault. Code Delta Sigma Niner verified. Nightingale Blue protocol initiated. Stand by for secure voice link with National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC. Federal Liaison and FBI Child Abduction Rapid Deployment, CARDI Team Coordinator. Relevant technical support tasking underway via JCS channels. Maintain channel security. Stand by." David felt a dizzying wave of relief wash over him, so potent it almost buckled his knees. It worked. He had broken protocol, risked everything, but he had activated the storm. Help, real help, was coming, descending from the highest levels, completely bypassing the indifferent local system embodied by Officer Thompson. He leaned heavily against the tree again, phone clutched tight, waiting for the next voice on the line, praying it wasn't already too late for Maya. The clock was still ticking, but now finally powerful allies were racing alongside him. The secure voice link crackled slightly, then cleared. A new voice came on the line, calm, professional, radiating competence. "Mr. Chennault, this is Special Agent Davies, FBI Card Team Coordinator. I'm patched in with Director Evans at NCMEC and Colonel Matthews Liaison from JCS Support." We have your initial report via Nightingale Blue. Can you confirm your daughter's full name, DOB, physical description, and clothing again for us, please? David repeated the information, his voice steadier now, buoyed by the knowledge that capable professionals were finally engaged. As he spoke, he could hear faint typing in the background, the unmistakable sound of information being entered rapidly into multiple systems. Okay, Mr. Chennault, Agent Davies continued. We understand local PD has not yet initiated an Amber Alert or formal missing persons report. That's correct, Agent Davies, David confirmed, bitterness creeping back into his voice. Officer Thompson, the responding officer, dismissed my report. He stated it was likely a runaway situation. Standard policy was to wait 24 hours, and he refused to take further action despite the circumstances and the witness mentioning a suspicious van. There was a fractional pause on the line. Understood. Mr. Chennault, Davies said, his tone carefully neutral but hinting at disapproval. That assessment is inconsistent with federal guidelines for potentially abducted children under 12. We are bypassing local procedural delays. NCMEC is initiating an immediate Amber Alert broadcast across 3 states based on your report and the vehicle description. Colonel Matthews, can you update on asset tasking? Another voice, crisp and military in cadence, came on the line. Agent Davies, Mr. Chennault, Colonel Matthews here. We've actioned technical support requests, relevant satellite imagery archives. For the Westwood Park area covering the last 3 hours, are being pulled and analyzed for the described blue van. We are also coordinating with NSA for any potential communication intercepts or device tracking relevant to known associates if your work becomes a factor, Mr. Chennault, though we understand that is not the primary hypothesis currently. David felt a chill despite the relief. They were already considering links to his classified work, a possibility he hadn't wanted to contemplate. Thank you, Colonel, he managed. FBI card team is wheels up from Quantico. ETA, your location, approximately 3 hours, Agent Davies continued. In the meantime, we're coordinating with State Police Command. They are dispatching multiple units, including canine search teams and air support, to Westwood Park immediately. They will establish a formal command post and initiate a grid search, superseding local PD's jurisdiction on this specific incident. Due to the federal activation, superseding local jurisdiction, the words resonated. This wasn't just help, it was a complete takeover triggered by his unconventional call. David pictured Officer Thompson's face when State Police Command and potentially FBI agents descended on his scene, the one he'd so casually dismissed. Mr. Chennault, Agent Davies said, pulling his focus back, we need you to be our point person on the ground until our team arrives. Can you return safely to the park entrance? State Police Command will meet you there. Provide them with everything. You know every detail, no matter how small. And please try to remain calm. We have significant resources mobilizing right now. We will find your daughter. Yes, of course, David choked out, overwhelmed by the speed and scale of the response. I'm heading back to the park entrance now. He disconnected the secure call, his hand trembling again, this time not just from fear, but from the sheer, staggering power he had just unleashed. He started walking quickly, almost running back towards the parking lot where Karen was likely still searching frantically, unaware of the federal cavalry about to arrive. He felt a surge of hope, fierce and bright, cutting through the despair. Maya had a chance now, a real chance. But beneath the hope, a cold anger simmered. Anger at Officer Thompson, whose prejudice and negligence had cost precious, irreplaceable time. Anger at a system that required such extraordinary protocol-breaking measures to simply ensure a missing black child was taken seriously. He knew that once Maya was safe, there would be another battle to fight, the battle for accountability. But first, Maya. Everything else could wait. David reached the park entrance just as the first state police cruisers began arriving, their lights flashing, sirens momentarily piercing the night before falling silent. Unlike Officer Thompson's casual arrival, these troopers moved with visible urgency and professionalism. They fanned out, establishing a perimeter, their faces grim and focused. A state police captain, identifiable by the insignia on his collar, approached David immediately, introducing himself crisply. Mr. Chennault, Captain Riley, State Police. We're taking lead on the search for Maya. Agent Davies from the FBI card. Team briefed me en route. Tell me everything, starting from the beginning. David recounted the story again, this time to an attentive, note-taking audience who asked relevant, clarifying questions. Karen arrived, alerted by the sudden influx of official vehicles, her face tear-streaked but resolute. She added her piece, the calls to friends, the details gathered about the blue van from the other parent. The state police set up a mobile command post near the entrance, unfurling maps, coordinating radio channels, preparing for the arrival of K9 units and the FBI team. The difference in response was night and day. This felt like a serious search operation, driven by urgency and competence. It was amidst this flurry of organized activity that Officer Thompson's patrol car reappeared. He had likely heard the escalating radio traffic, the mention of state police and possibly even the FBI taking over a scene in his sector, related to the missing child call he had dismissed hours earlier. He pulled up near the edge of the newly established perimeter, looking confused and distinctly unwelcome. He got out of his car, starting to walk towards the command post with a hesitant gait, perhaps intending to assert his initial involvement or simply figure out what was happening. Captain Riley spotted him immediately, his expression hardening. He excused himself from David and Karen and intercepted Thompson before he reached the main group. "Officer Thompson?" Riley's voice was low, but carried an unmistakable edge of authority. "Yeah, Captain," Thompson replied, trying to sound casual, but failing. "Just checking in. This related to that call I took earlier. The dad reporting his kid wandered off?" He still clung to his dismissive framing. Riley's eyes narrowed. "Wandered off? Officer? We have a potential abduction of a 7-year-old. Girl, an Amber Alert is active across 3 states. The FBI card team is en route, and JCS assets are providing technical support coordinated through the Pentagon. Does that sound like a kid who just wandered off to you?" Thompson stared, his jaw slackening. "Amber Alert? FBI? Pentagon?" The words seemed utterly disconnected from the minor, insignificant call he thought he had handled earlier. "But Dad, he seemed hysterical." "No proof," he stammered, floundering. "The dad," Captain Riley cut him off sharply, "is David Chennault. And apparently, officer, he has contacts you wouldn't believe. Contacts capable of initiating a federal-level emergency response when local procedures fail." Riley gestured, curtly towards David, who was now conferring quietly with another state trooper near the command post map. "That man made one phone call after you dismissed him and mobilized assets most governors can't access. Now I suggest you return to your vehicle and await instructions from your precinct command and likely internal affairs, because your handling of this initial call appears to have been catastrophically negligent." Thompson followed Riley's gesture, his gaze landing on David Chennault again. He saw him not as the hysterical parent now, but as someone calmly interacting with state police command. Someone who clearly possessed an authority utterly belied by his casual appearance. He remembered David mentioning being an attorney. No, wait, he'd said case files, yet consultant. But the call? The Pentagon? The pieces slammed together in Thompson's mind with the force of a physical blow. The man whose desperate plays he had ignored. The black father whose fear he had dismissed as exaggeration born of negligence or race wasn't just any citizen. He was someone connected, someone important, someone capable of bypassing the entire local chain of command and triggering a national security level response for his missing child. Officer Thompson felt the blood drain from his face. He felt suddenly, overwhelmingly nauseous. The condescending smirk, the dismissive chuckle, the refusal to file a report. Every detail of his interaction with David Chennault flashed before his eyes, now cast in a horrifying new light. He hadn't just failed a citizen. He had potentially obstructed a critical search, ignored vital information, and dismissed someone with connections reaching into the highest levels of the U.S. government, all because of his own lazy assumptions and ingrained racial bias. He stared at David Chennault across the rapidly assembling command post, truly seeing him for the first time, and the realization of who he had dismissed and the potential consequences of that dismissal hit him with the force of absolute terror. He froze, rooted to the spot, the flashing blue and red lights reflecting off his suddenly pale, sweat-beaded face. While Officer Thompson grappled with the catastrophic implications of his actions, the search operation kicked into high gear with impressive speed and coordination. The arrival of the state police canine units marked a significant escalation. Handlers led expertly trained German shepherds and bloodhounds, providing them with scent articles, a shirt Maya had worn recently, retrieved frantically from David's car by Karen. The dogs immediately began working intricate patterns, noses to the ground, pulling their handlers through the darkening park and towards the surrounding streets, their presence a tangible symbol of hope and serious intent. Overhead, the distinct thumping sound of a helicopter grew louder as state police air support arrived, its powerful searchlight beginning to cut sweeping arcs through the twilight, illuminating patches of the dense woods bordering the park, searching for any sign of Maya or the blue van. David and Karen stood near the mobile command post, feeling simultaneously helpless and yet fiercely connected to the massive effort unfolding around them. They provided every detail they could recall to Captain Riley and the lead state detective who arrived. Maya's habits, her favorite hiding spots, though they knew this wasn't hiding. Any recent interactions, any possible connections, however, remote. They shared the picture Karen had circulated on social media, which state analysts immediately integrated into official bulletins. Every piece of information was treated with respect, urgency, and professionalism, a stark, painful contrast to David's earlier encounter with Thompson. The FBI card team arrived approximately 3 hours after David's initial call to the Nightingale Blue Channel, a whirlwind of focused energy and specialized expertise. Special Agent Davies, the calm voice David had spoken to on the secure line, greeted him with a firm handshake and quiet reassurance. "Mr. Chennault, Karen," he said, addressing them both, "we're here now. We have profilers, hostage negotiators, just in case, forensic specialists and technical analysts coordinating directly with Colonel Matthews' team." He gestured towards a cluster of agents already setting up laptops and communication gear near the command post. "We're analyzing traffic cam footage citywide, running facial recognition against known offenders in the area, cross-referencing the partial plate against every database imaginable. The satellite imagery from the time of disappearance is being enhanced and scrutinized frame by frame. The scale of the resources being deployed was staggering. David, despite his own familiarity with high-level government operations, felt a sense of awe mixed with the gnawing fear for Maya. This was the kind of response every missing child deserved, regardless of their parents' connections or the initial responding officer's biases. He pushed down the anger towards Thompson again, forcing himself to focus on cooperating with Agent Davies and his team. They asked detailed questions about Maya's personality, her routines, any potential vulnerabilities, any custody issues, quickly ruled out. Any possible connection, however remote, to David's sensitive work, a line of inquiry that sent a fresh chill down his spine. Had Maya been targeted because of him? It was an unbearable thought, but one the FBI had to consider. Meanwhile, Officer Thompson remained sidelined, instructed by Captain Riley to stay near his vehicle and await formal instructions from his precinct, likely involving internal affairs. He watched the escalating operation, the dogs, the helicopter, the arrival of the sharp-suited FBI agents conferring quietly with David Chennault, with a growing sense of dread and unreality. He saw the respect with which David was now being treated, the urgency with which his information was being acted upon. The contrast with his own dismissive handling of the initial call was a public, humiliating indictment. Other local officers arriving on the scene gave him wide berth, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed contempt as the story of his blunder inevitably began to circulate through hushed radio exchanges and sideways glances. He felt isolated, exposed, the blue wall offering no comfort or protection in the face of such a monumental, multi-agency screw-up triggered by his own actions. His career, he knew with sickening certainty, was likely over. The only question now was how bad the fallout would be, and whether the little girl he had failed would be found in time, a question that gnawed at him with newfound, terrifying weight. The clock continued its relentless ticking. But now, the search had the full force of federal and state power behind it, desperately trying to make up for the time lost to prejudice. The multi-agency search operation worked through the night with tireless efficiency. Canine units followed faint scent trails that unfortunately dispersed near the main road bordering the park, suggesting Maya had likely been put into a vehicle. The helicopter's thermal imaging cameras scanned the woods and surrounding neighborhoods, revealing nothing definitive. Teams of officers and volunteers, coordinated by state police, conducted meticulous grid searches of the park and nearby, streets checking empty lots, culverts, anywhere a child might hide or be hidden. David and Karen, unable to simply wait, joined one of the search teams, their flashlights cutting through the darkness, their voices raw from calling Maya's name, clinging to the hope that she might be nearby, lost or hurt, but findable. The breakthrough came not from the ground search, but from the technical assets David's call had mobilized. Analysts working with the FBI and Colonel Matthews's team at the Pentagon found a crucial piece of data just before dawn. By cross-referencing the partial license plate description of the blue van with traffic camera footage from major intersections leading away from the park around the time of Maya's disappearance, they isolated a likely match, an older model, blue Ford Econoline van, with distinctive rust patches and damage consistent with the witness description. Critically, one traffic camera several miles away captured a clearer image of the full license plate. Running the plate instantly yielded results. The van was registered not to anyone local, but to a man named Gary Fisher, residing in a neighboring state, with a prior arrest record for custodial interference and suspected links to fringe sovereign citizen groups known for anti-government sentiment. This immediately shifted the focus of the investigation. Was this a targeted abduction, retaliation against David due to his government work, or an opportunistic crime by someone with a history of related offenses? Simultaneously, NSA liaisons, acting on the protocols triggered by the Nightingale Blue activation and cross-referencing Fisher's known associates and communication patterns, flagged unusual burner phone activity originating from a cheap motel located just off the interstate, about 60 miles north of the city. The timing and location aligned plausibly with the van's likely travel path after leaving the park area. Agent Davies received the updates almost concurrently. The information was relayed instantly to State Police Command and the FBI agents now. Setting up a tactical base closer to the motel's location, the focus of the operation shifted dramatically from a localized search to a targeted recovery effort aimed at the motel. David and Karen were briefed immediately by Agent Davies, the news hitting them with a mixture of terror and hope. Maya wasn't wandering lost. She was likely with this man, Fisher, in that motel room. The danger felt more specific now, but so did the possibility of imminent rescue. Agent Davies assured them that a specialized FBI hostage rescue team, HRT contingent, already pre-positioned due to the initial federal alert, was mobilizing alongside state SWAT units to approach the motel. Their primary objective was Maya's safe recovery, using established protocols for high-risk entries involving potential child hostages. David felt a desperate urge to go himself, to be there, but Davies gently but firmly explained that civilian presence, especially a parent's, could dangerously complicate such a delicate operation. He and Karen would be kept informed in real time from a nearby staging area, as federal and state tactical teams converged silently on the nondescript roadside motel under the first light of dawn. The contrast with the previous evening's local police response was stark. Resources were mobilized, intelligence was analyzed and acted upon decisively, jurisdictional lines blurred in the face of federal priority. Back in the city, Officer Thompson received a call from his union rep informing him that Internal Affairs was launching a formal investigation into his conduct, citing dereliction of duty, failure to follow missing child protocols, and conduct unbecoming. He was officially suspended pending the outcome. He heard the news numbly, the immediate concern for his job overshadowed by the dawning realization that his actions might have directly endangered a child now potentially facing a high-risk rescue operation miles away. The weight of his failure felt crushing, absolute. The fate of Maya Chennault now rested not on his judgment, but on the skill and precision of the elite teams his own negligence had indirectly necessitated. The motel room door breached with explosive force, a controlled detonation, followed by the swift, overwhelming entry of heavily armed FBI HRT operators and state police SWAT members. "FBI, show us your hands! Get down! Get down now!" The commands were sharp, authoritative, leaving no room for hesitation. Inside the dimly lit room, Gary Fisher, startled awake from a fitful sleep, barely had time to react before he was pinned, face down on the cheap carpet, hands secured tightly behind his back. On the small worn bed, huddled beneath a thin blanket, eyes wide with terror but physically unharmed, was Maya Chennault. An agent immediately scooped her up, shielding her small body, murmuring reassurances. "You're safe now. It's okay. We're the police. We're taking you to your daddy." Maya, recognizing the uniform, albeit different from Thompson's, and the promise of her father clung tightly, tears finally spilling over. Fisher, it turned out, was not connected to David's work. He was an unstable individual with a history of brief opportunistic abductions, often targeting children who seemed momentarily unsupervised in public places. He had seen Maya alone near the swings for that brief minute. David looked away, snatched her quickly, bundled her into his van, and driven aimlessly before stopping at the motel, his motives disorganized, his plans unclear beyond the initial act itself. Maya's safe recovery was due to a combination of his incompetence and the sheer speed and technological reach of the federal response triggered by David's call. At the staging area nearby, David and Karen received the news via Agent. "Davis' secure radio. Child is safe. Repeat, child is secure and unharmed. Suspect in custody." The wave of relief that washed over David was so powerful it nearly buckled his legs. He pulled Karen into a fierce hug, both of them sobbing openly now, the agonizing tension of the past 12 hours finally breaking. Agent Davies allowed them a moment before arranging for Maya to be brought immediately to the staging area for medical evaluation and, most importantly, reunification. The reunion was everything David had prayed for. Maya running into his arms, clinging to him with desperate strength, burying her face in his chest, safe. He held her tight, murmuring her name, stroking her hair, his own tears mixing with hers, the scent of her shampoo filling his senses, grounding him back to reality. Karen joined the embrace, their fractured family momentarily whole again in the overwhelming relief of Maya's safe return. While Maya was checked over by paramedics and gently interviewed by a child forensic specialist from the FBI, the wheels of justice began to turn for Officer Thompson. Captain Riley from the state police formally briefed Agent Davies on Thompson's initial handling of the call, providing the context for the delayed response. Agent Davies, in turn, included this information in his official report to the FBI, hierarchy and the coordinating bodies at NCMEC and the Pentagon. The information was also relayed back to the city's chief of police and the mayor's office, accompanied by a strong suggestion from the Attorney General's office, kept informed throughout, that Thompson's actions warranted severe disciplinary action and potentially criminal investigation for reckless endangerment or official misconduct. The public narrative, already explosive due to the revelation of Thompson's dismissal of the father of a missing child, solidified into outright condemnation. News outlets contrasted the image of the massive, successful federal and state rescue operation with Thompson's initial indifference. Editorials called for his immediate firing and prosecution. Community groups demanded systemic changes to missing persons protocols, particularly concerning potential biases in responses. Officer Thompson became the unwilling poster child for negligence and prejudice within the department. His union, while obligated to provide representation, found his position publicly indefensible. Faced with termination proceedings, potential criminal charges, and becoming a pariah within his own department and the city at large, Thompson ultimately submitted his resignation, ending his law enforcement career in disgrace. His reckoning was swift, public, and absolute, a direct consequence of dismissing the wrong father at the worst possible time. In the weeks following Maya's safe return, the Chennault family began the slow process of healing. Maya, remarkably resilient but understandably shaken, received counseling facilitated by specialists recommended by the FBI's Victim Services Unit. David and Karen, united by the shared trauma and relief, focused entirely on providing Maya with stability, reassurance, and unconditional love. David took an extended leave from his consulting work, pouring all his energy into his daughter, rebuilding the sense of security that had been so violently shattered in the park that day. The nightmares faded gradually, replaced by bedtime stories and reassurances that Daddy, and now many police officers and agents, were there to keep her safe. Professionally, David faced minimal fallout for his use of the Nightingale Blue Channel. While a formal inquiry noted the breach of protocol, the extraordinary circumstances, the verified failure of local law enforcement response in a time-critical potential child abduction involving the dependent of cleared personnel, led to an official reprimand, but no suspension nor loss of clearance. In fact, behind closed doors, several high-ranking officials privately commended his decisive action, acknowledging that his unconventional call likely saved his daughter's life by overcoming dangerous bureaucratic inertia and bias at the local level. His actions inadvertently highlighted potential gaps in interagency communication protocols for emergencies involving cleared personnel and their families, prompting internal reviews within certain DoD and FBI departments. Officer Thompson faded quickly from public view after his resignation, his name synonymous with negligence and bias. The criminal charges for reckless endangerment were eventually reduced to official misconduct in a plea deal that avoided a trial but ensured he could never work in law enforcement again. The city implemented mandatory retraining for all officers on missing child protocols, emphasizing immediate action for children under 12 regardless of initial circumstances, and incorporated specific modules on recognizing and overcoming implicit bias in citizen interactions, using the anonymized details of Thompson's failure as a stark training example. Whether these changes would lead to lasting cultural shifts remained to be seen, but they represented a concrete institutional response. David Chennault, however, found he couldn't simply return to his previous life as if nothing had happened. The experience had changed him. The helplessness he felt facing Officer Thompson's dismissive prejudice, the terrifying knowledge that his daughter's fate might have hinged entirely on his secret access to power unavailable to most citizens. It left him with a profound sense of unease and responsibility. He began tentatively reaching out to community organizations that advocated for missing persons, particularly those focusing on the disparities faced by minority families in getting timely and adequate law enforcement response. He started quietly, sharing his story, carefully omitting classified details about the specific communication channel used, framing it simply as escalating through federal contacts in closed sessions with advocates and policymakers. His calm demeanor, combined with his professional background and the undeniable drama of his experience, made him a powerful, credible voice. He spoke about the crucial early hours, the devastating impact of dismissive attitudes, and the need for standardized, bias-free protocols that treated every missing child report with the urgency it deserved from the very first call. He began working with a national non-profit to help develop training materials for law enforcement dispatchers and first responders, focusing on active listening, empathy, and overcoming implicit bias in high-stress situations involving frantic parents. He didn't seek the spotlight, preferring to work behind the scenes, leveraging his analytical skills and newfound advocacy passion. He knew systemic change was slow, but he felt compelled to try. His daughter was safe thanks to an extraordinary intervention, but he couldn't forget the terrifying possibility that without his unique access, Maya's story might have ended very differently. His advocacy became his way of honoring the resilience they both discovered and fighting to ensure that other parents, facing their worst nightmare, wouldn't have their pleas fall on deaf, biased ears. The quiet IT consultant had found a new, urgent mission, born from personal trauma and fueled by a determination to fix the system that had so profoundly failed him. One protocol, one training session at a time. A child's life hangs in the balance. Their father's desperate pleas meet a wall of indifference, clouded by prejudice. Officer Thompson didn't just fail to serve and protect, he actively obstructed justice through his biased inaction, dismissing a father's terror based on assumptions rather than facts. He wielded the power of his badge not to help, but to diminish, unaware that the hysterical man before him held a quiet power capable of moving mountains, or at least mobilizing the Pentagon. For those of us who understand the unique terror of fearing for a child's safety, and for those who have felt the sting of being dismissed or disbelieved by authority figures because of race or perceived status, this story cuts deep. We know that in a crisis every second counts and bias can be lethal. Maybe you felt unheard in a moment of desperation. Maybe you've encountered someone whose prejudice blinded them to the urgency of your situation. Maybe you've felt the frustration of knowing a system designed to help is failing you when you need it most. But David's story, while highlighting systemic failures, also showcases incredible resilience and the power of fighting back, even unconventionally. His strength wasn't just in his high-level clearance. It was in his refusal to accept dismissal, his determination to exhaust every possible avenue to save his daughter. It reminds us that power isn't always visible. It can reside in knowledge, in connections, and in the fierce love of a parent, willing to break protocol for their child. It underscores the vital importance of demanding accountability and fighting the biases that can turn a plea for help into a deadly delay. So if this story resonated with you, if it made your heart pound, if it fueled your desire for a more just and responsive system for all families, please don't let it fade. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear that persistence matters, that bias has consequences, and that the fight for every child's safety requires constant vigilance and unwavering advocacy. Until next time, listen with empathy, demand action, and never stop believing in the power of a parent's resolve.